I've never mentioned this in a video before, but a long time ago, before Dracula, before Slinger, I used to be a Pyramid Head main. Back when I first started playing Dead by Daylight, I was really interested in playing a ranged killer, and being the huge Silent Hill fan that I am, naturally I gravitated towards Pyramid Head. I had a really fun time playing him, so much so that it led to me trying Huntress, Artist, and Slinger, who would later become my main for nearly 2 years. One of the reasons why I ended up dropping Pyramid Head is because he has what I believe to be one of the worst collections of add-ons in the entire game, and I've always wanted to take a shot at reworking his add-ons, not only to bring them in line with the other killers, but also to make them more fun to play with. So with that, my name is Nomad, and this is the 4th episode of Dead by Design, the series that's all about the creative side of Dead by Daylight. Before we get any deeper into the video, I want to give a huge shout out to Squidman. Squidman is a top 10 Pyramid Head main and a very kind person. I ran into him while playing Survivor, we ended up talking, and he gave me a ton of feedback on the add-ons you're about to see. If you're watching this, thanks again Squidman, you were a great help and I cannot thank you enough. Now this is the second entry of Dead by Design to tackle already existing content, so before I completely overhaul nearly every single one of Pyramid Head's add-ons, I thought it might be a good idea to try and explain why they're in such a bad spot to begin with. I think it's safe to say that nearly everyone can agree that the trio of range increasing add-ons is pretty good. Having an increased duration on your trails isn't bad either, but in my opinion you only need one of these add-ons and anything more tends to be overkill. And the Crimson Ceremony book is good since as of a recent patch, it now works on ranged hits. Now let's look at the remaining 13 add-ons. Let's start with these two collections of add-ons, which we'll just call Recovery and Duration for simplicity. These add-ons reduce the recharge time of Rites of Judgment and increase the time Rites of Judgment can be used respectively. Assuming no add-ons are used, it takes 5 seconds of power usage to fully deplete your power gauge, and 20 seconds for it to refill completely when emptied. You could argue that 20 seconds is on the longer end, but you have to remember that you typically won't fully deplete your power gauge every time you use Rites of Judgment. More often than not, you'll be drawing smaller trails at specific locations to torment survivors and zone them away. If you do burn through the entirety of your power gauge, which is pretty unlikely, unlike other killer powers, you don't need to wait for it to fully recharge before being able to use it again. Additionally, only a finite amount of trails can exist in the trial at any given time, and Punishment of the Damned, the ranged attack used from Rites of Judgment, doesn't rely on or deplete the power gauge when used. Basically, all of this is to say that these 6 add-ons are pretty mediocre. Next up we have the Killer Instinct collection of add-ons, which increases the duration of that effect when a survivor steps on a trail. Killer Instinct is the worst form of information in the game. In the fringe cases where it's good, such as Artist and Legion being able to detect survivors in lockers, isn't something that can happen with Pyramid Head. If a survivor steps on a trail, 99% of the time you're already chasing them, and due to the nature of the effect, it's difficult to land Punishment of the Damned only working off of Killer Instinct. Now on to the final 4 add-ons, what we have left is more unique, but still lacking. The Obliviousness duration from the Lost Memories book is way too short to get any value from, and again, you're most likely already chasing that survivor when this effect activates. Same thing goes for the Rust-Colored Egg, but while it has 4 times the duration of the Lost Memories book, Blindness is almost universally regarded as the weakest status effect in the game. The Iridescent Seal of Metatron gives you some aura reading, which is never a bad thing, but it's unlikely to have that many survivors tormented at one time. And caging a survivor in that scenario leads to the others being able to remove their torment, which isn't always ideal. And finally, the Obsidian Goblet is one of the worst Iridescent add-ons in all of Dead by Daylight. It's awkward to use, map dependent, and overall the effect just isn't that good. And that, in my humble opinion as an ex-Pyramid Head main, is why he has the worst collection of add-ons in Dead by Daylight. So now that we know why Pyramid Head's add-ons are so bad, how do we fix them? I think it's obvious that most of his add-ons need a complete overhaul. That means giving most of the add-ons new effects and condensing multiple add-ons into one. I decided to leave 4 of the 5 add-ons we mentioned earlier untouched, and when making new add-ons, I prioritized uniqueness and variety over raw strength, although these add-ons are still pretty good. We'll start with the common add-ons, 2 of which have been completely reworked. The Lead Ring is a simple add-on with an okay effect, and I'd like to keep it that way with the only change being a 15-second increase to the duration. If you're wondering why I giga-buffed this add-on, the Cinderella Music Box and the Mannequin Foot add-ons have been changed. That means the Lead Ring is now the only add-on to increase the duration of torment trails, and as a result that means it needs a big buff to remain viable. Next up we have the Dead Butterfly, which is receiving a full rework. with the new effect increasing the speed at which you send survivors to cages by 150%. This makes Pyramid Head much more effective at pressuring groups, and it'll save you some time after downing a survivor if you choose to cage them. For the final reworked common add-on, we have the Copper Ring. With my rework, the Copper Ring gives you a loud noise notification when a survivor crouches through a torment trail, and there would also be a small cooldown to prevent spamming. Next up, we have the uncommon add-ons, starting with the Spearhead. Rather than increasing your power duration, the Spearhead now gives you a pretty sizable amount of aura reading for hitting a survivor with the latter half of Punishment of the Damned. This would let you know if a survivor left a loop after being hit, and it could also set you up for an easy snipe on your next Punishment of the Damned. The Leopard-Print Fabric now makes it impossible for a tormented survivor to hide their scratch marks or pools of blood, rather than slightly increasing the Killer Instinct duration from stepping on a trail. This is a massive buff to your tracking, and ideally it would trump a lot of stealth-related perks like Shadow Step and Lucky Break. The Forgotten Videotape has a completely unique effect now, causing your Punishment of the Damned strikes to leave behind a trail of torment. Trails created by this add-on wouldn't inflict torment for a few seconds after being created, which makes it so survivors can actually play the game. I'm sure you all remember the PTB where Pyramid Head inflicted torment on Punishment of the Damned hits, and we really don't need to go back to that. More on that later though. And for our final uncommon add-on, the Cinderella Music Box now encourages tormented survivors to buddy up, because when they're 24 meters away from another survivor, they suffer from the Obliviousness status effect. Moving on to the rare add-ons, starting with the Valtiel Sect Photograph. Rather than reducing your power's recharge time, the Valtiel Sect Photograph now causes all survivors within 24 meters of a cage action or final judgment to scream in terror, revealing their aura for 3 seconds. This helps you find survivors you wouldn't have seen otherwise and is just a pretty fun, thematically fitting add-on. The Tablet of the Oppressor no longer increases your power duration, instead hindering survivors that are on top of trails of torment by 10%. And just as a bonus, here's another version where the hindrance builds up over time, since hinder effects can be pretty scary to play with. Misty Day Remains of Judgment now has a cool effect to match the equally cool name. Pressing the active ability button now causes all trails of torment to erupt, removing them from the trial. Survivors that are standing on top of a trail as it erupts would scream in terror and suffer from an additional effect based on their health state. Injured survivors would be inflicted with the Deep Wound effect, and healthy survivors would have their auras revealed for 5 seconds, also becoming tormented if they were crouching. And if a trail is underneath a dropped pallet, the pallet will break after a short delay. The Mannequin Foot now has an effect that matches its icon? I don't know. Rather than increasing the duration of Rites of Judgment trails, you now receive a strong 15% haste bonus for 8 seconds after caging a survivor or performing Final Judgment. Similar to the Dead Butterfly, this makes Pyramid Head a monster at pressuring groups, and would also be very fun to play around with. Coming up next, we have the very rare add-ons, starting with the Scarlet Egg. The Scarlet Egg no longer increases Killer Instinct duration, and now inflicts Obliviousness on all survivors for 30 seconds after sending a survivor to a Cage of Atonement. The Rust-Colored Egg is just receiving a functionality change, now working off of Punishment of the Damned hits as well as when a survivor steps on a trail of torment. I don't think it would hurt if we added 10 seconds to the duration either, since blindness is a weaker status effect and this is a purple add-on. The final very rare add-on to receive a change, the Lost Memories book, is receiving a complete overhaul because the Scarlet Egg is now the Obliviousness add-on. I tried something drastic here by allowing this add-on to apply Torment on ranged hits, but within reason. I've always been a fan of rewarding Pyramid Head for ranged attacks, but it's obvious that having it apply Torment on every hit simply isn't healthy and makes him way too oppressive. I think the best way to strike a balance here would be to have Punishment of the Damned apply Torment on consecutive hits within a short duration, and that's exactly what the Lost Memories book now does. Damaging a survivor with 2 consecutive Punishment of the Damned strikes now inflicts them with Torment, but this effect could only apply to each survivor once per trial. Having such a small window to apply this effect makes Punishment of the Damned function similarly to the Unknown's UVX, where missing once or hitting a different survivor will put you back to square one, and you really have to try if you want the reward, which in this case is admittedly really strong. Moving on to the Iridescent add-ons, starting with the Obsidian Goblet. The original effects of this add-on are awkward to use and weak, but in all honesty, I think the core idea has a lot of potential. Your Trails of Torment would now last forever, but the amount of trails you could have in a trial would be smaller. While standing on a Torment trail, you'd become undetectable and receive a pretty large haste bonus, with these effects lingering for 3 seconds after stepping off of a trail. As a quality of life change, channeling Rites of Judgment wouldn't create Torment trails for about 2 seconds. For the final add-on of the video, the Iridescent Seal of Metatron would also receive a full rework, and I think this should be the fun add-on that lets you express your skill with Punishment of the Damned. Pressing the active ability button while Punishment of the Damned is active would cause it to stop and split, with each part firing perpendicularly in opposite directions. Split shockwaves would mimic the range and effects of your initial shockwave, so for example, if you were using the new Forgotten Videotape, you could zone incredibly hard with Punishment of the Damned. For such a strong effect, I do think there should be a downside to this add-on. I think giving Punishment of the Damned a cooldown after use is completely reasonable, but you could also take it a step further and give survivors endurance when they come out of a Cage of Atonement. And with that, we've successfully reworked nearly every single one of Pyramid Head's add-ons. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have your own ideas for some add-on effects or just want to give feedback on these ones, don't be afraid to share it in the comments down below. Thanks again to Squidman for all the help with this video, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful night.